right, so this is part 2 of our dissection of Men at 40 by Donald Justice. We left off, I think, like line 10 or something.
Yeah, third stanza.
Third stanza. So I know we left off with the idea of time, or at least I wanted to start off with talking about how the face of the boy as he practices tying his father's tie there in secret. Remember, Brian, I wanted to ask you, do you think that this is existential despair, that this person's having like a deep, almost panic about their midlife because of this idea of disorientation, or do you think that calling it existential despair or deep discombobulation is maybe an overstatement?
I would say I don't know yet. I would say that would be something to consider once we've worked through the entire poem and try to figure out how, the last two stanzas fit in with that idea. I think you're completely right in thinking that something's going on in these men, in their mind. Is it that yet? I think that's something to be thinking as we're reading. I wouldn't set it in stone yet until we kind of hopefully can reconcile the whole poem to that
That's
idea.
true. That's true. Because if you're making bold statements, you sort of need bold claims to back them up, and we're not done yet. So I guess I'll temporarily bookmark, because the reason I was asking is if I keep saying it's singular he, but if he's really that despairing to the point of anxiety, I was wondering if there's some sort of hidden symbol perhaps about tying something like a tie around your neck or something like that, because that's been a symbol that's been a tie has been a symbol of sort of corporate slavery and such in poems I've read before. And so I wanted to know your opinion about existential despair before I made that leap, but you're right. We have to finish the poem and see if there's more evidence. That's still sort of unsupportable, I think, at this point.
But I guess I've been itching to get back into it, and all I really remember about the last two stanzas was crickets and mortgage at the end. And the mortgage, I guess, with this this tie idea of being tied to something. But anyway, I think we should probably just get to the fourth stanza.
Okay.
And the face of that father, so the same father that the boy tied the tie in secret, the face of that father still warm with the mystery of lather. So those two lines, the man at the stair is still reflecting back on, his childhood and picturing the father. The mystery of lather, I'm thinking you're thinking, probably something I haven't done. But I don't know.
Shaving.
Right?
They used to warm up lather and put on their face with a brush, right, in the old days?
Yeah. So still one with the mystery of lather, I guess I'm getting this image again of a boy looking at the father shaving and yearning for that almost, or just even wondering about this aspect of adulthood, because the boy obviously doesn't have facial hair yet, doesn't need to shave. So what is this that's going to come? Right? It's still a mystery. He doesn't know it yet. I guess that's what I'm thinking right now.
And this stanza actually makes me think it's less likely that tying a tie is some sort of depressive thing, because to me there's only two ways you can sort of nostalgically look back at your youth. There's probably two things that a child wants. If a child wants to be like their father, there's probably only two things that are sort of rites of passage, if you will. A kid can't tie his own tie, and that's a sign of of being an adult. So, and the kid can't shave either. So those are two things that you can't rush, and so I think that maybe the tying of a tie and a shaving of the face represent two stumbling blocks to becoming an adult as soon as this child would want to. So maybe it's not tying something around your neck as some sort of depressive thing. It's more just a rite of passage. So that's what I'm thinking now.
Yeah.
But what you're saying makes a whole lot of sense. I don't understand the next two lines, I'll be honest.
They are more fathers than sons themselves now. I think these men at 40, they are no longer children to their fathers, in so much as they are now fathers to their own sons. So these men at 40 are now the father.
So it's like a generational pass
that they were looking up to, or yearning to be.
I think I follow that. Something is filling them something. I don't know, because that's.
Okay, yes.
Oh, okay.
Something
Is that a
filling-
transitional a line? Something is filling them something. Because by itself, I don't know what that means. And the problem is there's a new stanza. So am I supposed to take that in isolation, or is it transition to the next idea, which I haven't read yet? Oh, okay. So that is like.
Yeah. So something is filling them. Something that is like the twilight sound of the crickets.
Okay.
So these men at 40 now, right, have this something filling them. I would spend, like, if we're talking about like diction, like maybe we're gonna spend some time on softly and rest and learn, like something. It's not defined. It's not even defined in clear, concrete terms by the poet, right? So to clarify what the something is, it just repeats the word something. Something that is like the twilight sound of the crickets. So I gotta picture that image. All right, the twilight sound of the crickets. I hear it, right? So I'm picturing the sun. It has gone down. We're just about down, and so maybe that's significant. Like the day is done. We kind of got into the seasons a little bit.
Oh, twilight.
But the twilight sound of the crickets, and it's immense. So there's a lot of crickets. You can't pinpoint, like, where is this immense sound coming from, right? You're not like, well, there's a cricket, there's a cricket, there's a cricket. So it's like, it's just kind of like out there, like in the ether. Like there's this sound, but it's not really a sound, right? That's just a comparison to talk about whatever this something is. So whatever this is that's filling these men at 40, it's kind of like it can't really be defined and pinpointed where it's coming from, but it is almost everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
Kind of thing.
That isn't, yeah, I like your point about the not indecisiveness, but undefinable, indefinable, is that the word? Yeah, indefinable quality, like there's repetition of things that are hard to pin down. And I can see that perhaps contributing to this person's sense of lack of maybe purpose or lack of agenda or like life agenda. I don't know what you would call that. I guess purpose works. So, filling at the woods of the slope behind their mortgaged houses, and now I see what you're saying. To me, that last line is the heaviest of the entire poem. Behind their mortgaged houses. That seems like a conclusion or a send-off. Like I remember, I think it was T.S. Eliot who said that the most important part of a sentence is the end. And I think that the same thing could be said of a poem too. There's something about stopping. You like spend more time thinking about the last line because you finished reading it. And that mortgaged house idea ties in, pun intended, with the tie around the person's neck. That these men are enslaving themselves in some ways. They're following what every generation has done. You know, they've worked, they've got education, they end up with a family and 2 kids and a dog and a white picket fence. And they're just following along with what tradition states, which is they're more fathers than sons themselves now. And here they are at the end of that road. They've done everything they've been asked to do, but they're tying themselves up with ties, and they're enslaved to their mortgaged houses. And so he feels. I think that's the idea from the first stanza about the stasis or the lack of movement, the lack of jubilant, youthful energy. This mortgage is the idea of just like permanent sunkenness to one location. So it's the lack of freedom is what I'm getting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like it's an ugly word too, right? Like mortgaged. Like it's not
Good
even
point.
easy to say.
What is that called? Like
we could talk about sound.
Cacophony?
Yeah. I think, right, like filling the woods at the foot of the slope, woods and foot. You got like some assonance going on. It's
And such a cumbersome last line, behind their mortgaged houses. It's very bumbling and cumbersome.
Yeah, it's not attractive. And so I guess probably just enough so like you were right to point out, like that's nothing to regard necessarily in high esteem, or at least these men at 40. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that last bit is tricky. So I guess what I would say now is to bring it back to like what like a potential assignment would be for this poem. Let's say this poem was on like the AP exam. It would say like identify lit devices and explain how they contribute to the meaning of the work as a whole. So I would try to start there. Like at the end of the day, like what do you think the meaning of this poem is, and then try to identify like how the poet basically told us that that's the meaning.
That's a good point. So if you if someone were to come to conclusions like we did, like that there's some sort of like lack of movement, you could point to things like softly, like mortgage, like rest, and these words sort of connote stasis or a lack of jubilant life, and that could be a body paragraph, right, for rhetorical analysis or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm still trying to say like how to articulate like, what I think Men at 40 is about, to put it simply. Yeah, I think it's about the despair, the realization that life is moving onward. For these men that they're in like the decline. I guess I'm thinking like if this person's 40, their father's at least 70. Like they're seeing what's to come. Just like when the boy is yearning to be the father and practicing the tie, wondering about this whole shaving thing, and looking forward to that. Right, still warm with the mystery of lather, like it warms positive. So like want to do that. Want to be that father. Now that boy is the father. Their father's like 70, real close to the end. And so it's just wanting, like, let's slow down. And that's maybe like the movement beneath them in the second stanza, right? Though the swell is gentle, like, I mean, if the father was 30 years is a long time, but like, you're not going to like feel it all at once, but like that movement is coming, and I think with the doors closing, like they've realized that this time has passed them in certain aspects of life and passed them, and they're realizing what is ahead, and I'm not looking forward to that.
Right. I think with the idea of the mortgage, I think I am going to go ahead and take the bold claim that this tie is maybe has some maybe depressive symbols behind it. I'm recalling a famous quote about the businessman life, the suit and tie and the cubicle life, and its rigidity. And there's a famous quote about it. It says, a necktie, inverted though it is, will still hang a man if he's not careful. And what that quote means is that, like, if you're thinking about hanging, you're thinking about something around your neck and going up, but that a necktie is around your neck and going down. So inverted though it is, even though it's upside down, a necktie will still hang a man. And I don't think that we're supposed to take that quote literally, that businessmen are going to commit suicide or something like that. But I think that there's properties in a business life that can have the potential to strip you of the joy of living and being an individual and being free. And the last line about mortgaged houses and how you can technically chain yourself or enslave yourself to capitalism or to our society through bank loans and car loans and then being forced to then work. Like think about, I buy a house, I buy a car, and because I make those decisions, I have to go to work. I no longer have freedom over my free time. I have to do these things. And that reminds me of Into the Wild, which is something we're reading in AP 11 right now. It's a story about Chris McCandless who rejects this mortgage lifestyle and who rejects society because he sees people as like a herd. He sees people as not thinking about things, as being chained or tied down. I think in that book he even burns his money before he walks out into the woods. He burns it almost like as a symbol, saying, I'm not just leaving things behind, I'm leaving everything behind. I don't even want society's money. So I think that pairs well with this poem, this idea that society can choke you out and can strip you of your individualism, and that you might have to literally burn things and walk away in order to free yourself from the shackles of capitalism.
Honestly, like I wouldn't. That's awesome. I wouldn't even. I guess I wouldn't think to go that far. I would think that it's more about the realization of what the reality of the situation is, what they've, right, to borrow again mine too, like learn what the men have learned about what's to come, that they didn't know when they were boys. So that nostalgia aspect that you were right to bring up, from the third stanza and the deepened mirrors, they rediscover the face of the boy. Right, like, man, how great would it be to be able to go back and be looking forward to the future. I don't think that this is a very positive, poem. Like the men at 40 aren't looking forward. If anything, they're yearning to go backwards, which is in direct contrast to what they were as a boy. So like contrast even, I guess I just thought of it, like the different contrasts. Learn to close softly the doors to rooms they will not be coming back to. I think of kind of, they used to not close them softly, right? Like they've learned to do that. So what do these rooms represent? That's something that's, what do you think the rooms represent? I'd be interested. Are they different, like aspects?
I think it has to be all figurative, yeah, because the stairs are not a boat. Then you come back to the idea of opening and closing doors, or gaining opportunity or losing opportunity. And so the rooms would be paths or life choices that are either opening or closing to you based upon things inside and outside of your control. So I liked your point from yesterday that he closes the door softly. Figuratively, he closes off a whole life. I mean, a whole life of opportunity, a whole life of exploration, all dead to him then because he's made a decision. And as soon as he closes that door, he has this moment on the stairs that our interpretation, I think, has to hint. You and I have a slightly different interpretation, which is cool. That's where we can sort of see this three-dimensionally. But I think if you take that moment on the stair to be some sort of almost anxiety attack, then I feel like I have to really ratchet up how serious this poem is, up into the point of much more despairing thought, But you're right. In order to have my opinion, I have to downplay the importance of how hopeful his youth was, and how he does have good thoughts about his father and being young, which is meaning, which is hope, and it at least exists somewhere.
That wasn't the bell to get out of here, was it?
I think it was.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we could spend another.
I anticipated that if today went like yesterday, and it certainly did, that we approximately said between 3,000 and 3,500 words about this poem, and I'm interested to know what my students think about that process, because I know that some of them would probably be saying that's too much. Like, what do you think this is, like a 100-word poem? So we're using more words to describe it than there were originally by an order of magnitude.
Oh yeah. Which is necessary for poetry. like poetry is so condensed and so, line specific, word specific, that every line, every word, deserves a lot of consideration.
That's true. I mean, even though we spent a ton of time on it, we didn't spend as much time as the author spent on it.
Ooh, not even close.
Not even close. So when you think about it from that perspective, then I think investing a lot of time in a poem is warranted, and it's not, quote unquote, doing too much. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Sometimes I describe poems as being like Kool-Aid straight out of the packet, and that like a short story is adding a little water to the Kool-Aid, and a novel is adding lots of water to the Kool-Aid. So this, like to your point, this is condensed. This is pure. It's hard. It's harsh. Some people don't like poems because it's just like too much.
It can be intense, yeah, and it can be work. Like I have students every year, it never fails. Like, why don't they just say it? Why don't they just say it?
Why don't they just say it? Why don't they just say I'm depressed and I don't know what to do?
Like that doesn't begin to capture like how complex anything is. Man, I really like this poem. I don't know if I have even yet have a handle on it.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing this. So I appreciate you coming and lending your ideas.
Oh, thanks for having me. This was a blast. This is what it's all about. Just trying to
Very
figure
cool.
it out.
All right, see you guys next time.